couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks ago maybe, Rick Beato and Rhett Scholl, other guitar YouTubers and musicians, did that video that you might have seen where they were talking about lighter strings perhaps sounding better, was the conclusion that they came to. I didn't see loads of it, but there was some criticism, and I think it kind of makes sense to say that to play just one guitar, so they were using a Les Paul and playing through a Marshall, some quite driven tones, to conclude from that video that lighter strings sound better than heavier strings doesn't necessarily seem all that scientific. So here's my take on it. This is an equally unscientific case, but Yamaha were kind enough to lend me this mic stand, and what is it? It's a PAC1511 mic stand, and I think from their workshop it came with 9s. So I've put on some D'Addario 11 to 49s, which are the strings that I used to use on Strats and Tellys, and so it's quite a substantial change in string gauge. And the main point of this, I guess, that I can conclude is that this will radically change the instrument unless you make massive adjustments. This is something that anyone who's tried to put on like 13 gauge strings on a guitar might find out. It tends to pull the neck forward quite a bit and you end up with a higher action than you had before. So without truss rod adjustment, I don't think you could go from gauge 8 to 11, which is I think what they did in that video, without some substantial difference to the instrument. So the main thing I think that changes with string gauge is the feel of the guitar. The bending, vibrato, obviously you have to apply more tension to get the same results. So it can feel a bit more substantial, the guitar, in your hand. That's the way I feel about it. I don't know whether there's a tonal difference. I can listen back to what I'm about to do and take some conclusions from that, but my contention is that the main difference that going up in string gauge or down in string gauge will make to you is the feel of the instrument, and whether that affects you positively or negatively is the main thing. Heavy strings don't necessarily come with tendinitis. It's a technique thing, I think, and probably a genetics thing. And if heavy strings do cause you pain, there's literally zero reason to use them. But if they feel good to you under your fingers, I think that's probably what most heavy string players might say. Yes, I like the substantial feel of the guitar. It might make a difference tonally, it might not. But I think that's what most players are thinking. Oh, I'm going to use heavy strings because I like the way it feels under my fingers. That's my hypothesis on the scenario. I'm waiting for this to settle, and then I'm going to record another little clip and see if I can hear any real difference in tone. So that's not particularly conclusive or evidence-based or anything, but I would say with the heavier strings, obviously you get a much stiffer feel. The trade-off is there's less a kind of bright, jangly content in the guitar tone. Depends if that's what you're looking for or not. Bending is not really idiomatic to jazz playing, so the lighter strings where in jazz, bending is not a huge part of the genre. So with 11s, bending feels slightly more difficult, but that's not really an issue for jazz playing. Everything about the guitar, though, for me feels more resistant, and it feels more like you're playing a guitar as opposed to lighter strings, which to me feel less like a guitar, if that makes any sense at all. But it feels more like I'm having to actually work when I'm playing with heavier strings. I'm not saying that's a better thing or anything. For me, I'm more comfortable playing this guitar with heavier strings on it. If I started to develop tendonitis or anything like that, that would be what would make me reconsider. But yeah. Listening back to the camera audio only, you can hear more of a mid-range focused response from the guitar, and it's definitely less scooped than the lighter strings. So depends, I guess, what you're into, but do lighter strings sound better than heavier strings? What is better is kind of more important to that, and what feels better is mainly going to be the thing that makes you decide whether heavier or lighter strings are for you. So there's nothing wrong with deciding to go with light strings, heavy strings, mid-gauge strings. It's completely a personal choice. Everyone's hands are different, everyone's taste is different, and everyone's guitars are different as well. And to say that lighter strings sound better, have better tone, doesn't really make sense in my eyes, because tone is completely subjective in any case, and what is good tone to one person or another varies completely. Our ears are different. What is more important as a player, I think, is what feels right for that instrument and for your fingers, and is healthy, not just for your actual hand health, but for your music health, if you like. If you're battling with heavy strings and thinking, oh, I can't play what I want to play, then there's no point in having heavy strings. Hopefully that was some sort of time that doesn't feel completely wasted having watched this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it and like this sort of thing, if you'd like to subscribe. Let me know if there are things within the string world that I should be checking out or experimenting with.